Hey, I'm Randy and you're watching The Cheap Audio Man. Here at The Cheap Audio Man, we help folks find high-value hi-fi home theater and headphone equipment, and it doesn't get much higher value than today. What if I told you you could get a music streamer that does things better than products costing 2 times, 3 times, 5 times as much? Would you be interested? Please say yes. So we're talking about a Raspberry Pi running Volumio, connected to a display with a digital hat on it, running out into a DAC. Maybe that's only 3. Don't let that scare you. It's kind of easier than you think it is. Raspberry Pi. 2012 they came out with the first Raspberry Pi, and originally they were made for computer science training and education. It's a little board level computer, very inexpensive, but people figured out how powerful and versatile they were, and they started sticking them in robots and stuff, and someone figured out how to make a music streamer out of it. As of 2021, there's been 40 million Raspberry Pi computers sold, which makes it the most popular computer out of the UK. So I got a Raspberry Pi about a year ago. The Raspberry Pi 3, I got the digital hat, and a hat is just something that sits on top of the Raspberry Pi. I got the digital hat because the USB on the Raspberry Pi 3's a little bit noisy. So anyway, this one is not a 3. This one is a 4. I use the same digital hat on there. Hi-Fi Berry Digi Hat Plus, Pro Plus, and then the screen. And the screen, to me, is the coolest part of this whole deal. Yes, they sound good, and you can just get one of these. One of these, stick it in your pocket, a little music streamer. I like the display though. So that's a 7-inch Raspberry Pi display. They're about $100. So all in, the Raspberry Pi 4, the Digi Hat, and the display comes to about $200. If you don't want the digital hat, you don't need to get it. If you don't want the display, you don't need to get it. But I'm going to talk about Volumio. Volumio is freeware, and there is a premium tier. I subscribe to the premium tier. That gives you native title, native Qobuz, Title Connect, as well as a bunch of other functionality. So when I first got Volumio, I hooked it up to my NAS, Network Attached Storage Device. That's where all my music lives, in there, virtually. I'm a big computer guy. I like the networking of music. But it does way more than just network attached music. I'm going to run through these. Brings in Title, Qobuz natively. Supports Title Connect, supports Spotify Connect, does AirPlay, and also reads music attached directly to it through a thumb drive or hard drive, whatever type of drive you want to attach to it. That works. Speaking of attaching things to it, you can also connect a CD drive, like a CD-ROM. Remember those? You can also attach one of those and you can play and rip CDs. It does Bandcamp, it does 80s radio, 80s radio. Can be a room bridge, has hotel radio, Jellyfin, mini DLNA for other streaming things, Mixcloud, Radio Paradise, and you can do a YouTube cast to it. You do a lot of things. I don't know about any of those other things because I really only used it for Tidal, for Qobuz, for Spotify, for my network attached music, and for AirPlay. And guess what? It works. Most importantly, you can hook up a display, and I don't know what it is about me personally. I want to see the album art. I love album art, and I talked about it in the Bluesound Node video about giving me a screen and I'll pay them money for it. But this already exists. Now, granted, Volumio doesn't do everything that the Bluesound does, but I will argue that Volumio does more than most streamers do. Bluesound is kind of an outlier. They're just good. They do everything well. Maybe Sonos. I've never played around with Sonos. Other than that, give me a Raspberry Pi hooked up to a display running Volumio. More important than anything else here is it plays Gaplessly. And Gaplessly means that if you're listening to a live record or a record that one song goes right into the next. There's not a pause between the tracks, and that bugs me really badly. Through AirPlay, you can kind of stream gaplessly. Most streamers don't play gaplessly, except for the Bluesound node, and Volumio, and Rune. It's not all roses and gravy, because it's not the simplest thing to do on the planet. It's not impossible, but it does take a little bit of patience. So if you're interested in Volumio, there's a third-party free application that you can download for any iOS or Android device, probably running a modern operating system. You can also get to it from a computer. So with the app, you get access to all the music, either streaming or networked or hardwired. Basically controls everything. However, if you get the screen, you can control things from the screen, kind of. So I'm going to switch the track here. Boop. Yep, right there. Switch the track, which is kind of fun. So what are the gotchas? The gotchas are that you have to configure this thing. You have to download it from the internet. And then you flash it to a little micro SD card. Then you plug that SD card in, and then you turn it on. Now when you turn it on, if your Raspberry Pi is Wi-Fi enabled, it will put out its own hotspot. Then you go in there, you type in Volumio 2, you can get into it, and then you can set it up. You have to install plugins. So if you want Spotify Connect, I don't know if Tidal Connect's a plugin or not. If you want the display, you have to install plugins, and then you have to restart it. Supposedly, there is a way to USB out from a Raspberry Pi 4 directly into a USB DAC. I've yet to figure that out, and I've tried. Basically, every time I get a Raspberry Pi out, I look at my watch, and then 3 hours later, I wonder where the time has gone. I'm not saying that that has to be you, because if you use a digital hat, it's very simple. You go into the playback options, there's an I2S, you hit that, and then there's a list of products. You just highlight the product that you have, hit save, and then restart it. Basically, if you ever have any problems with Volumio or Raspberry Pi, kill the app and restart it, and things miraculously get better. I will say though, with this latest version of Volumio, things are actually very smooth. If you have a stable internet connection to this and to the device that you're driving it with, I haven't had any issues. I have this one connected to, it's a little travel router, and I connect it from the travel router to the Pi with an Ethernet cord. Now it does have Wi-Fi, and that Wi-Fi actually works surprisingly well because I'm all the way at the corner of my house. I find though that I get a little bit more stable connection with the little travel router. Now you probably don't need that. I'm at the edge of my Wi-Fi coverage here. I'm not a huge Tidal user, but I will say this, I have become a huge Tidal user since I started listening to this. The Pi with the display running Volumio has quickly become my favorite streamer. 1, because it's cheap. 2, well, because I made it. 3, because it has album art, and I think that's cool. If you have a stable internet connection and a digital hat on here, it's really not that difficult. If you have a digital hat on, you have to power both the display and the Pi separately. If you don't have a digital hat on, you can just run wires from the positive and the ground from the Pi itself into the display and power them both at the same time. I probably can still do that because I have a 3 amp power supply, but I'm gonna have to solder some wires. Please don't freak out though. You can still do it, and it's still worth it. If you are into DIY, if you're into tinkering, or if you're just into saving money, you can get something like this. This is a nice case. So, whoa, so it's got the Pi in here, it's got the digital hat on here. Everything is nice and enclosed, and then you just plug in a USB-C and you're rocking and rolling. I've already set this one up. I set this one up earlier. So what I did was I flashed a new version of Volumio. Flashing a new version is basically Raspberry Pi speak for I downloaded Volumio onto an SD card and I put it in there. Then I plugged it in, it puts out its own Wi-Fi hotspot, I connected to it, and then you can connect it to your internet. And I just had this one running off of Wi-Fi. It works flawlessly. If you do get one of these, be prepared to restart it a few times. It was a bit sketchy at first, but after I left it running for a while, things settled in and it's very smooth right now. That would be my one piece of advice. If you get it and you get it going, leave it on. Don't turn it off. I'm going to do another video where I walk people through how to actually get a Raspberry Pi up and running with Volumio and the display. Display is super easy. It's a ribbon cable. You plug one into the Raspberry Pi, you plug the other one into the display, you turn it on, and you're done. So putting the display on is not that difficult at all. Ton of fun. Inexpensive. It's fun to see the album art. It's fun to use something that you made. Now, this doesn't have a case. You can get some cases. The problem is most of the cases that you can get for the display in the Raspberry Pi will not accommodate a digital hat. So I'm thinking about building a case out of Legos. Really a stand out of Legos. Right now I just have it leaned up against something. Probably not the best way to do things, but that's how I'm doing them. If you're into digital music, into a little DIY, I don't think you can go wrong with making your own Raspberry Pi Volumio streamer. Get a display though, it's pretty cool. Raspberry Pis are kind of hard to come by right now. I went and I looked them up. There's still a few available. If you go to the official Raspberry Pi site, you can get some and pre-order others. Apparently, like everything else, there's a shortage of Raspberry Pis. Ton of fun, highly recommend it. Sounds great when you get it going. Pipe it into whatever DAC you have. Gapless playback. It's wonderful. It's so much fun. And I'm kind of becoming a Tidal fan. I need to hook up Qobuz through here too, but I don't know what it is. I just kind of dig Tidal. Don't get me going on MQA. I don't care about MQA, but Tidal's pretty cool. So, if you want to support the channel, you can sign up for Patreon, patreon.com/cheapaudioman. Every Sunday night, we have Patreon-only Zooms. We also have a Patreon-only Facebook group. You can also sign up for Amazon Music. There's a link in the description or the pinned comment. Click on the link, sign up. You get 3 months for free. I get a couple of dollars, even if you cancel. You can also use the links. I'll link some of these that I can find on Amazon and other places. If you click on some of those links and buy, I do get a commission, but it doesn't cost you any more, so it's a great way to support the channel. So don't binge watch anything. Binge listen and then binge look through your new Raspberry Pi Volumio streamer with a Raspberry Pi display and fill your soul with happiness. And with that, I'm Randy. I'm the Cheap Audio Man.